Okay, I'm gonna show you a little bit of what I'm doing this morning. I think you already kind of see me washing. This is my chicken processing station, and what I have here is an old wash tub, and I use it like a sink basically, but I also have a great big stainless steel bowl that I keep the meat in there. The chicken is over on this side when I'm plucking it, and then as soon as I get feathers off of it and stuff, it goes into the stainless steel bowl on this side to like pre-rinse and kind of help me to keep it clean while I'm processing the chicken. Got a chair right here. You know, it doesn't have to be great, but it has to be someplace for me to sit down. This yellow bucket over here is what I line with a couple of garbage bags, and I put my feathers and any parts that I'm not going to keep, like intestines and things like that, in that. And that feathers and the guts both work really well as compost. And then down in this container is a chest for igloo cooler, and I put ice in this. You know, like a couple of bags of ice depending on how many chickens I'm doing, and fill it full of cool water, and then I put about a third a cup of salt in there, and the salt will actually help to kill the bacteria off the surface of the chicken skin, and it also helps to kind of drain excess blood out of the carcass. So that's like the blood soak, and it stays in that about between 10 minutes and at the most probably 2 hours. After that, the chicken's taken in and it's rinsed in the kitchen sink and packaged up properly so that we have a nice clean rinse on it before it goes into the bags to chill and then to get ready to go to the deep freeze. Something I highly recommend, and that is an electric turkey fryer. And what I do with this is I have it full of water, and I don't know if you can see, but on the very top of that lid right now there's some dish soap. I'm going to plug that in, and I set my temperature to 160 degrees. It's a little hotter than most people do it. Most people do it between 140 and 150. I like 160. You have to be careful not to cook your chicken, but at 160 degrees it's about a 1 minute dip and swish, and the feathers just come out like crazy. So that's the one I prefer to do it at. If you overcook your chicken, if you put it in there too long, it will cook the feathers onto your chicken and you will not be able to get them out at all. It'll be really bad. But people are always talking about buying a chicken plucker, and I would, if I had the money to spend, I'd much rather spend the money on a scalder rather than a plucker. If you scald them at the right temperature, plucking is not a problem. If they're not the right temperature and you've got to battle that, then plucking is a big issue, and you would need a plucker. Pluckers are harder to clean than a scalder is. Just having something I can plug in here, I've got a little plug in up here, and I can plug it in, set the temperature. Once I get the temperature right on this, it'll hold it all day, and I don't have to worry about the temperature changing at all. It's just perfect every time I dip a chicken. I put the dish soap, which is on the top of this lid right now. As soon as the water gets hot, I turn the lid over and let the dish soap go in the water. Dish soap keeps things a little bit smelling better. It also helps to allow the water to soak into the chicken's feathers quicker. It like saturates the feathers and breaks down the oil within the chicken's feathers, and the water gets to the chicken's body quicker, so that its scalding works quicker. Anyway, that's kind of my little setup. I usually just have a kill station kind of over this direction where I kill them. I have had chicken cones in the past. That is the preferred method. Right now I don't have one that fits my chickens, so I'm just doing the old-fashioned method. I'm a neck breaker, which I know a lot of people, that will make them all squeamish, but when you're talking about this, it's a fast way to get them killed and cleaned right. So anyway, that's my chicken setup. And right now I'm going to plug this pot in and get it going so it's warming up, and then when that's warm I'm going to put ice in my cooler, and I'll turn the water on real slow and low, and I'll be ready to start, and of course line that. I'll be ready to start cleaning. I have 4 chickens left to clean. I do have one more quick thing to add. Anytime you have an electric appliance, I don't care if it's a drill, anything outside, especially if you've got water around or moist conditions, you need to plug this into a ground fault circuit interrupter. You cannot just plug it into a regular outlet, because if you would get a shock, you will die. So you want to plant in something that will protect you from shocks. So be sure you have a GFCI outlet or a GFCI protected plug to plug it into. There she is, the last chicken of the year. And as you can see, this is why we do this. She's very healthy. She's standing on her legs good. Bright eyes. They've been happy. They've been on grass. Nice and fat. Been treated right. Yes, you've been treated right. You've been treated right. Oh. Got a thermometer here. I'm checking my temperature. Just a little bit over 160. Add a little cool water. The coolest you can do it is at 140. The highest temperature you can do it at is 160. It's like right where I'm at now. Give them a dip and a swish. And how I check, you can test a feather. Test a wing feather is the best way to test. The wing feathers come out good, then you're ready. Quick dip and a swish. Good. Put my lid back on, and now my scalding pot will hold it to the same temperature for me. Okay, we're at the plucking station and cutting station now, so right now I'm ready to start plucking these birds. Try to show you how I do it. I dump them out of my big bowl. And I rinse the big stainless steel bowl and put it over on this other side for now. I'm trying to get them so that I can put them over there when I'm rinsing them, and I pluck them 2 at a time. If you have your temperature right, the feathers just come out like crazy. I usually do the wings very carefully first. And I cut mine up as I go, so you will watch this is a little bit different than most people do it. These wing tips are going to go for soup stock, so they just go over here and start soaking in my cold water because I get them out of my way. And I'm going to do the other side. And I really like these wash tubs, or something similar. You could probably use a sink and set it up if you had a nice deep sink. Something like that you really need when you're cleaning these, because it makes your processing a lot easier and it makes it a lot cleaner. There's not flies. I set my station up on concrete if possible, or at least gravel at the very minimum, because you want to not be standing in mud when you're doing this, and you're going to have water running pretty much the whole time you're processing. So I got the wings on this one done. I'm going to do a little bit on the neck. I've got these great big scissors. I am not a knife user. I use these great big huge poultry scissors, or anyway, I use them for poultry. I think they were actually like utility scissors, but they're very heavy duty scissors. And I cut them in there, and I cut the skin off, and the crop is also in this skin, so it's just the whole thing goes away, and I'm left with the neck, so it goes over in my first rinse. Now we're ready for legs. Turn the bird on its back, hold on to a leg, and basically you just rub down the leg, and if you've got the temperature right, the feathers just come off. They just come off very, very quickly. I typically skin my breasts, so I don't spend a lot of time on the chicken breasts as far as plucking them, because I'm going to take the skin off anyway. There's one leg done. There's two legs done. I'm going to turn him over. Cleaning the back just as that fast. Doesn't take much at all. If for some reason you want to keep the tail, you pluck the tail at this point. I don't keep the tail. If you do keep the tail, there's an oil gland right here that needs to be cut out. But since I don't keep the tail, I just stand them on their end like that, right above their anus. And I just make one big cut, and their whole tail comes off. And it just goes right in the pot. Okay, now I'm to take the feet off. And again, you can use chicken feet if you want to for stock. It makes great stock. Right now I'm lacking freezer space, so I'm not going to save my chicken feet. So I'm just going to put them away. But if you do want to save your chicken feet, you will scald and peel these also. And I always cut my toenails off just so everything's nice as clean as possible. But they have a joint, obvious joint right there, and you're just going to find the joint. And if you do a little snip at first, and then you can just pretty easily take them off right at the joint. Just like that. They're off. Now at this point, I have a carcass that's fairly well plucked, and the wing tips and legs are off, and I'm just going to put him right over here out of my way, and let him go into his first rinse. We're going to go to the second bird. And like I said, it does take just a little bit longer to pluck one if you hand pluck them, but it takes a while to clean the stupid plucking machines too, and I just don't have room to store all that. I don't want to spend the money on it. We do 30 to 35 chickens and 2 or 3 turkeys every year for our family to eat. I cannot, just for the amount of work and money that they cost, I have no reason to do that. These work just fine. And like I said, if I'm going to spend money, I'd want a scalder that would hold the temperature for me, because basically I plug it in and forget about it till I'm done. I don't have to worry about it. It's set, temperature set, and everything's good on it. Another wingtip, same deal. Hope I'm getting good pictures here. So we start with the flight feathers because they're the hardest to pull out, and you really need to kind of pull them out straight from you. And then the rest of them, it's just kind of a pinch and rub. It just kind of, they come off real easy. Cornish chickens actually are easier to pluck. The Cornish meaties like these are easier to pluck. The Red Ranger chickens or Freedom Ranger chickens are a little bit more difficult because they have quite a few more feathers. And a heritage bird is, of the chickens, the hardest to pluck because they have the most feathers. These things, as you can see, are about 3/4 of the way bald, so it does not take much to get them plucked. Same deal here, I'm just cutting my neck at the base, cutting around the skin, removing the crop, most of the feathers. I pull the skin off over my trash can, and that's the neck. I've got one more wingtip I need to take off here for the stock pot. And then back, just because he's laying that way. Tail, just because he's laying that way. Flip him over. Second leg. Remove my feet. Okay. As you can see, this is a very rough pluck. It's over there rinsing. At this point, I clean up my plucking area. I'm just going to sweep up all the big feathers and stuff that's left over. I'll take my hose, hose it out a little bit. That gets rid of all the big feathers, and it gets my area kind of cleaned up again, because the next process we're going to be a little bit more fine-tuning. First thing I'm going to deal with is the wing tips and the necks. like I said, these just go in my soup pot, so I do some preliminary last little minute checking, cleaning, because they may be going in my stock pot, but I don't want dirty chicken feathers on them. Check them over. Rinse them off. And into the salty ice bath they go. Now I'm ready for the chicken. Now, what you do with the chicken from this point is your choice. I cut my chickens up primarily just because it's easier on my freezer space, and there's really only 2 or 3 people eating at all each time. It's either going to be my grandson over here or my son over here, or I'll make enough for 3 people and then my husband and I have snacks or lunch later. So we don't do whole chicken at a time. We just don't. So what I do is I cut mine up. There are other ways to do this. One of the ways is you could take the chicken on its breast like this, and you can cut down both sides of this backbone. Just snip right down with your scissors from neck to backbone, and you can take that backbone piece out, use it for your stock pot, and then you can open the bird up and take out the breastbone, and what that will do is it'll open the bird flat like that, and it's basically butterfly to open. They call that spatchcocking in cooking. And you can take a whole bird like that, and after their breastbone is out and their backbone is out, you can put them in a bag flat, vacuum pack them, and they take up very little space in the freezer also, because you can stack packs right one on top of the other one. These chickens like this, they just take up a lot of space because you've got air cavity in there that you've got no, you're freezing that space basically and wasting that space. Another thing you can do is you can split them in half. I do that often with chickens. I just cut them right down the backbone and right down the breastbone and just do the halves of the chicken, because that way when I'm packing them up in freeze wrap or wrapping them up in either Ziploc bags, or if I want to use my vacuum sealer, they seal them up and they're like a little cup, because you have the underside where it's the inside of the chicken and then you have the outside of the chicken, and they will stack like this in the freezer, and you got a lot of space for chicken. But like I said, we typically just cut ours up completely because it's just how we eat them, and I just like it better that way. It takes less freezer space for us. So what I do first of all, and notice they're still not perfectly plucked, they're still kind of rough plucked, but that's okay. I'll show you how we take care of that. Go through here, and I'm going to take off a wing, okay, and then I'm going to go over this wing, do a pretty good job looking it over and making sure that there's no feathers on that little particular piece of meat. Put this other one out of here for now. And once I have it fairly clean, no feathers, it goes over into the other one and it just sits in the plain, this is just plain cool water to start off with. This is like a first rinse over in this other compartment, and it's in my stainless steel bowl over there. So next I'm going to do the next wing, same way. If you hold them by the wing, they seem to kind of just, the weight of the bird lowers it down. And the second wing is off. And again, I'm going to look this bird over for feathers. There's little bitty pin feathers on this still. Sometimes I may need to rinse a little, kind of get them loose, make sure I've got everything pretty much off. This is kind of my final inspection before well, not final, my secondary inspection, I guess you could say. I do one more inspection of them before I put them in the packages to make sure I've got all the feathers and everything off of them. So there's a nice clean wing. Now we're going to go on to the legs. I'm going to hold it by the leg bone and let the weight of the chicken kind of drop down, and I'm just going to cut along the skin. I'm just taking this whole leg and thigh off. Again, I'm going to rinse it. And then we're going to go through and get the rest of these big feathers off of here and make sure that there's no feathers. To me, it's easier to pluck a piece at a time, final pluck, than it is to try to get every nook and cranny of a three-dimensional bird. I don't know, I just roll them around and roll them around, and it seems like I always miss feathers. So if I'm doing them like this, I can kind of hold it in my hand and look it over and kind of decide what I'm doing. Now these are larger chickens, so I will be, because it's the very last ones I have to do of this batch, so I will be packaging this as a leg quarter. So it'll be 2 leg and thigh quarters in a package. So that's just all it gets done with that one. Do the same thing, take another leg over here. See, I can just snip right along this skin line. Again, rinse it off a little. And take the last few little pin feathers off of it. Make sure it's a nice clean piece of meat that I want to eat. And when it passes my muster, in it goes. I'll try to move the camera angle for this next bunch. See if it helps a little. Once I've got the bird cut, I'll pretty much do the same thing to the second bird. But since it looks like I'm about to run out of battery, I'm going to proceed with this one. Okay, right now we just have basically the carcass and the back in one chunk. And the first thing I do is I hold it up here and I get right between the breastbone and the back where they attach, and I cut through that little bone. And then the same thing on this side. Basically, I'm disconnecting the breastbone from the back. Okay, now I'm going to lay it on its side. I'm going to take my scissors in that area, and you can see there's a place where the ribs are in between the backbone and the breast. I'll take my scissors in there, and I'm just going to cut right along that line. And if you keep your scissors up towards the top of the meat and you have it held like this, all the guts kind of fall down, so you're not going to cut through any guts. Okay, same way as the other side. I have to do it down here because I can't hold it. And cut it. Okay. There we got it split, and pretty much the breast just comes off like that, just like you're popping the hatch. And you can put your fingers right here in these breastbones and hang on to it and get your skin off. And there's a chicken breast, boneless chicken breast. I mean, skinless, I should say, not boneless. At this point, I'm going to take my fingers in here very carefully, and I'm going to remove the liver. There's the liver. There's the heart. And if you want it, here's the gizzard, but typically we don't do the gizzard at our house. Now I'm going to hold it over my feather bowl and pull. Basically, I take all the guts out, and then I'm going to trim. And take away the rectum and things. Then you want to take your thumb and you have to get in the backbone and get out. These are the lungs. You take the lungs out. And out they come. And now I have a chicken back. Again, this is just going to go in my stock pot. You can trim it up as you need to, make sure it's clean, and in it goes. Now it's time for my liver. You want to hold the liver up out of the way. This little packet here is the gallbladder. You take your fingers right at the base of the gallbladder and pinch real hard and pull. You pinch with your finger. You don't want to squeeze the little bag, and you can get the gallbladder removed very easily. And then you've got a good liver to eat for some fried chicken livers. The livers are going to go in their own little bag with the hearts. Same with the heart. I'm going to clean it up. Rinse it off. And into the bag it goes. And when the bag is zipped, it goes into the ice chest. And that's basically how you do a chicken. We're getting kind of low on battery, so I'm going to scooch it over here and see if I can get this part of it. Okay, this is where they've been in here rinsing. And I've just got hose water running on them, cold and cool. And I just let it run. It stays in the bowl, so it lets them kind of soak and rinse and get all the extra feathers and things off of them. Any kind of anything that might be on them. Usually it's just like pin feathers or something that's on them. But I let that all rinse off, and then I take the pieces out, look at them again real quick, and they go over into the ice chest, and they start chilling. And like I said, there's salt water in the ice chest soak. The salt really helps to get the chickens any bacteria that might be on the skin or anything like that. And these breasts, I will eventually debone the breasts, because that's what how I'm packaging them up, is deboned. So there we go. And that water gets dumped, and it's starting in fresh for the next chicken. And here it is in the salt water with ice chilling. It's going to stay here for about another 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to take it in and rinse it and start packaging it up. Timing wise, for me at least, since I typically work by myself, I will do 2 chickens at a time, and I will get this chicken down to where it's just its body part, and then I will quit at that point, and I will go dispatch 2 more chickens. They can be doing their bleeding out and flopping and whatever they have to do while I'm finishing this one up, and then they'll be ready to go into the alder. So again, I'm picking any little See, sometimes there's these little teeny little feathers that you can't hardly see, and they're like in their armpits and stuff. And when you're doing a whole chicken, I just have a really hard time. I miss those. I don't know if it's because I'm old and blind and can't see or what. But just pick all these little pin feathers are the hardest. Pick them all out. Make sure everything's out of there. And then over into the cool water. Go to the next one. And really, you know, typically, I'm talking to you guys today, but typically when I'm doing this, I will put some music on or something to listen to on the radio and just, you know, work. And I'm in the shade. I try to do it at a time of day when I have decent breeze blowing, because that keeps me cooler, and it also keeps flies away. You want to keep your area where you're processing your chickens clean, and you want to keep the area where the chickens are being bled out and stuff away from where you're actually cutting up the chickens and picking them and stuff like that, because you want flies to stay as far away from the meat as possible. You know, it's more comfortable for you and for keeping, you know, diseases and things. You want to keep your meat clean. You're going to eat this stuff, right? So you want to have good practices. Using a potable water approved hose would be a great idea. I don't do that. I know I'm evil. But to use a hose with the had potable water that you're supposed to be drinking would be the best. Keeping everything, you know, as clean as possible. I scrub down my station with soap and water before I even start, and we scrub it down with soap and water after. And the soap I use is a antibacterial dish soap, because I think that helps the best as far as keeping things clean. You know, I'm just trying to keep it as clean as possible. You've worked hard to produce meat. You don't want to let a bunch of flies blow on it and get it all dirty and nasty when you're cleaning it. Another thing is, when I do chickens, probably the most I'll butcher in a day is 10. That's for two reasons. First of all, I'm old and can't stand it. Next of all, ideally you should take chickens, and I know people say you don't have to, but ideally you should take your chicken and chill them for between 24 and 48 hours after you butcher them. What that does is it allows the chicken to go through rigor mortis, which sounds just disgusting, but if you don't allow the chicken to do that before you put it in the freezer, a lot of times you'll have very tough meat, and that's just not what you want. You know, you're trying to get the best you can have. They hang and age cattle, and, you know, everybody talks about aged steak, so they've hung the steak for, you know, a month or 3 weeks or whatever before they... That's what it is. It's a cold treatment, and it allows the meat to tenderize and relax, and it just improves the flavor immensely. See, this one had a lot of little feathers on him. But you need to do that with chickens too. And like I said, I know a lot of people say, you know, they don't do that, or they don't whatever, but it's just better. And then besides that, if you have a whole bunch of meat chickens and you just throw them in the freezer, your freezer struggles. If you put them in the refrigerator and chill them down for, you know, 24 hours, then you take them to the freezer at that point, then you've got a lot better chance of, you know, keeping everything cool, keeping your freezer at temperature, and chilling everything up as quickly as possible. You want to keep things cold. You want to keep things clean. I like my big bowl here most of the time, but sometimes when it comes to trimming, you have to get kind of in the bowl because it's so tall you can't work very well. So I think in some ways having a sink on legs would be a lot better deal. Just buy an old sink at like Habitat for Humanity Restore or someplace like that where they've, you know, used. You can get them pretty cheap, and build a little wooden frame for it and have a little place to... It'd be great to wash your vegetables and things too. have a little outside sink. You know, if we're going to do this stuff, sometimes we have to get some things in place, some structure in place to make things easier for us. And that's like me and this chair, you know, it's like I could not do this if I didn't have a chair to sit in. There's just no way. Wouldn't happen. Most of that over there. And at this point, I'm going to go get another couple of chickens ready.